What is up, everybody? We're back here at King Film Sports for the NFL Week 16 playoff picture analysis and predictions. And in this one, we will be getting into both of the playoff pictures in the AFC and the NFC, as well as predicting the results for the last 3 weeks of the season to update my official NFL playoff predictions using the NFL playoff machine here, seeding each conference 1 through 7. But first, let's get into the update from the last week. We started out in the AFC here, where we still have the Chiefs at 13-1. Good win in Cleveland, kind of a grimy, sloppy game. But big news in that game late as Patrick Mahomes takes a tough fall there, getting tackled in an awkward fashion. He takes an injury to his knee there and ultimately could not play out the last few minutes. They had to put Carson Wentz in the game. And although they have a 2-game lead over this Bills team, it's going to be much tougher now if you don't have Patrick Mahomes for 1 or 2 or maybe all of these last 3 games here, especially with the condensed schedule that they're going to have with 2 short weeks upcoming here, as they do play on Christmas. So they play on Saturday morning hosting this Texans team. And ordinarily you would think that that spread is somewhere around Chiefs -4 or Chiefs -5. No, the Texans are currently 2.5-point favorites in that one, indicating that Vegas thinks that Mahomes will be out and Carson Wentz will be starting in that matchup, most likely there. So that'll be interesting to monitor. Then you have the Bills at the number 2 seed, who got a huge win against the Lions last week after they lost to the Rams. We kind of wrote them off for the number 1 seed, just thought that they would do well to keep a hold of the number 2. But Josh Allen looks to have a stranglehold on the MVP, currently at -900 odds. And we see the remaining schedules here laid out for the Chiefs and the Bills. Remember, the Bills beat the Chiefs at home earlier this season, so they have the tiebreak. And we see that the Chiefs, as I mentioned, Saturday against the Texans, and then next Wednesday, because they play on Christmas, at the Steelers. That's a very tough game in tough conditions, especially without Mahomes there. And then their last week is not a gimme either. It might be a Denver Broncos team that is playing to get into the playoffs. Never easy to go into the Mile High there, especially as we've mentioned without Patrick Mahomes. And then you look at the Bills. This is just a laughably easy schedule. You got the Patriots twice and then the Jets once here, but I'm not sure it's going to be as easy as everyone indicates. It's not going to be a layup to get to 3-0. The Patriots, although they lost big last week in Arizona, they might put up a frisky little fight in one of those games, and this Jets team isn't completely dead there. Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams with some late game heroics in Jacksonville last week, but we will monitor that as the race for the number 1 seed looks pretty entertaining now. And then we get to the number 3 seed. The Steelers lose in Philadelphia. Tough game for them there. Only 6 minutes of time of possession in the second half there, so they're probably out of the number 1 seed sweepstakes at this point, just looking to hold on to the AFC North lead there, as now the Ravens only 1 game back. And then you have the Texans, who clinched the AFC South with a good win at home against Miami there. Their defense really stepped up, and the Colts lose a big one to Denver there. So the Texans now with the 4 seed, and now they can start looking up, can they get a top 3 seed in the playoffs now? But they will definitely start out with a home game in the wildcard round. And then at the number 5 spot, you've got Baltimore coming off of the bye. Easy win in New York against the Giants there. Lamar played stellar, and now, as we've mentioned, they could realistically track down the Steelers team. Reminder that they play this Saturday in Baltimore. Ravens looking to get revenge from a few weeks ago when they lost in Pittsburgh. And then they too play on the short week against that Texans team in Houston there. So both of those games this Saturday and then on Christmas will be huge in this AFC playoff picture. And then at the number 6 spot, you've got the Broncos jumping the Chargers as they get a huge win against the Colts. Thought they would definitely lose that game. It's 13-7. The Colts are running the ball all over this Denver team. And then Jonathan Taylor drops the ball as he's crossing the goal line there. Ends up being a touchback. And then the Broncos score 24 unanswered points after that one. Anthony Richardson, just a horrible showing. And Bo Nix didn't look good in his own right. 3 picks. But the Broncos end up getting a huge win at home there and really solidify their playoff positioning there at 9-5. Now at the 6 seed. Then at the 7 spot, the Chargers with their 2nd consecutive loss there, an ugly one against Tampa Bay at home, as Mike Evans just went off. Baker Mayfield, great game, and really without J.K. Dobbins, they can't run the ball as effectively there. Justin Herbert got banged up late in that game, and now short week as they play this Denver team on their home field, SoFi Stadium. Conventional wisdom thought that the Chargers were the much better team, but now a game back and playing on Thursday night, we will see between these 2 teams. Reminder that the Chargers won in Denver earlier this season. Then the in the hunt graphic, this does not look as appetizing as it once did. As if the Colts won that game in Denver, we would have a very thrilling playoff race coming down to the wire. But now the Colts on life support after that loss. Then you have the Dolphins 6-8. Big loss for them against the Texans there. And then the Bengals at 6-8. Yes, they have won 2 in a row, but it looks very grim for them as well to make the playoffs. So really, in all likelihood, it's going to be the 7 teams that you see in the division leaders and wildcard spots making the playoffs, aside from some miracles from these in-the-hunt teams in the AFC. Then we get to the NFC, and I'm recording this before the Monday night doubleheader, but that won't change anything for the time being. As for the results of those games, as the Vikings will be locked into the number 5 seed, regardless of their results against the Bears, and the Falcons will still be in the hunt graphic as as they are behind the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, regardless of the result of that Raiders game. And we started out here at the number 1 spot with the Lions, who did lose this week, but it was an out-of-conference game. Better conference record is the tiebreaker between the Lions and the Eagles there, so they retain the number 1 spot. But pretty scary, as we saw on last Thursday night, their defense is a bit of a concern with all of those injuries there, and it really came to bite them in this Buffalo game as Josh Allen just did whatever he wanted in that game, and the Lions offense really did play well. Jared Goff 5 touchdowns in that one, but didn't end up mattering there as Lions lose at home in a big one. And then you get to the number 2 spot, the Philadelphia Eagles, 12-2, huge win against Pittsburgh, and now they have a 10-game winning streak going along here. And if the Lions just slip up once there, then the Eagles will take the number 1 seed, and they can clinch the NFC East this week with a win in Washington against the Commanders there. Then at the number 3 spot, you've got Tampa Bay climbing up here after a huge win against the Chargers. They have a mini winning streak going as this Baker Mayfield to Mike Evans connection has been very lucrative for them. You've also got some other standout rookies, Jalen McMillan and Bucky Irving. They're really running the ball down teams' throats, and their defense is a bit frisky there, so watch out for this Tampa Bay team. They currently have a 1.5 game lead over this Falcons team. We'll see if the Falcons can get back into it, as Atlanta does have the tiebreaker as they won the season series against Tampa earlier this year. And then at the number 4 spot, Los Angeles Rams, as they take the lead over the Seahawks. Seahawks lose to the Packers on Sunday night, and the Rams get a big win on Thursday night against the Niners there. In all likelihood, it will come down to a Week 18 division championship between those two teams in the NFC West, but we will monitor that. Then at the number 5 spot, you've got this Vikings team, as I mentioned, now looking decent to get the number 1 seed. They play the Lions in Week 18. We'll see if that is a division championship game, and potentially winner will get the number 1 seed and the first round bye. We will see if that's the case there. Then at the 6, you've got the Packers 10-4, huge win against Seattle there. We will see if they can overtake the Vikings in the next few weeks for the number 5 spot. And then Washington holds on late to beat that Saints team. They end up winning by just 1 point there, but still alive for the NFC East. They've got a big game against Philadelphia coming up at home this week. Then the Seahawks, as we mentioned, fall out of first place as they are losing the tiebreaker to the Rams, currently lost to the Packers on Sunday night there. And then the Cardinals get back into the win column, 7-7 with a win, but still looking bleak, outside looking in for their playoff hopes. Falcons, as we've mentioned, big one against the Raiders tonight, and if they win that, then they're only a game back of the Bucs. Then these last 3, Niners, Dallas, and the Saints, are pretty much out of it, still mathematically alive, but it will take a lot for all of those teams to get into the playoffs at this point. So with all that being said, let's get to my predictions for the last 3 weeks. We started out with this week, and I will be coming out with my game predictions and betting locks videos in the next 2 days, so be sure to click onto that one after this. And we started out in the AFC, where we have the Chiefs losing to the Texans. Yes, I think Mahomes will miss this game by all indications right now, and with that being the case, I don't think that this Texans team is a juggernaut, but I think that they will be able to best Carson Wentz and that Chiefs defense there. Then the Bills, I have them winning against the Patriots, gets them to 12-3 and only 1 game back. Texans, as I mentioned, winning that game, so they actually hop up to the number 3 spot, and the Steelers lose in Baltimore, which brings them down to number 4. Then they would have a tie record with Baltimore, and they would have split the season series, but they do have the better divisional record, so they retain hold of the division lead for the time being. Then at the 6th spot, you have the Chargers. I have them beating Denver on the short week. Let me know in the comments who you think is going to win that game. That one should be very close and entertaining there. And then Broncos slide down to the 7 at 9-6. And then some of these other teams in the hunt graphic, you have the Bengals beating the Browns in Cincinnati there, and then the Colts beat Tennessee, and then I also have the Dolphins beating the Niners. So all of those in the hunt teams stay in it with wins this week, according to my projections. Then in the NFC, I have the Lions going to 13-2. I think they win in Chicago there. Then at the number 2 spot, I have this Eagles team losing. I think just a tough spot for them after a big win, 10-game winning streak going along. I think they're flying a little too high right now, so I think that they lose this game to Washington there in a tough divisional matchup. Then at the 3 seed, I think the Rams, tough game in New York against this Jets team, but I do think that they win and get to 9-6. And then the Falcons, I do have them beating the Raiders tonight and then beating the Giants next week, and they take a hold of the division lead because I have the Bucs losing in an upset to the Cowboys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of that. And then the Vikings, I have them beating the Bears tonight and then also winning in Seattle. Geno Smith goes down with the injury, so we'll see if they end up starting Sam Howell in that one. And then I have the Packers staying in the 6th seed with a win against the Saints on Monday night there. And then, as I mentioned, Commanders hold on to the number 7 seed with their win against the Eagles. Then we get to the Week 17 matchups here, and this is where it really changes in the AFC. I have the Bills winning at home against the Jets, and the Chiefs lose on Christmas to the Steelers. Not sure if Patrick Mahomes will be right next Wednesday when they play that matchup, so I will have the Chiefs losing for the time being, which puts Buffalo in the number 1 spot. Chiefs slide down to the number 2, and the Steelers hold on to that AFC North lead there at 11-5 with that win. And and then the Texans slide down to the 4 as I have them losing at home to the Ravens on Christmas there. Then at the number 6 spot, I have the Chargers winning in New England. And then at the 7, I have the Broncos losing in Cincinnati. They can basically clinch their playoff spot with a win in that matchup, but I just think that the Cincinnati team, especially that offense, playing very well right now, not going to be an easy one for Denver to win that one. And then the other in the hunt teams, I have the Dolphins winning in Cleveland, and I have the Colts winning in New York, so a little drama there in terms of the wild card implications going into Week 18. Then in the NFC, I have the Lions winning in San Francisco, going to 14-2 there. The Eagles get back into the win column with a win against Dallas on their home field. Then the Rams, I got them going to 10-6 with a win on their home field against the Cardinals. And then the Bucs reclaim the lead in the NFC South with a win at home against Carolina, and I have the Falcons losing on the road there to Washington, so good one to look at there, and the Bucs now looking good to retain the NFC North crown. And then I have the Vikings losing at home to the Packers. I think the Packers get revenge from earlier this season when the Vikings won in Lambeau there, so that puts some intrigue on the 5 and 6 seeds, and then the Lions would clinch the NFC North if that were to take place there. Packers then at the 6 and Washington at the 7. And then we look at the Week 18 predictions that I have the Bills locking up the number 1 seed with a win in New England. I have the Chiefs losing this one to Denver. I'm not sure if they're going to play their players in this scenario. If this were to actually take place, they'd probably just rest Patrick Mahomes for the playoffs against a Denver team that really needs that one to get into the playoffs. As you look at some of these other in the hunt teams, I had the Bengals beating the Steelers there, so the Bengals would have made the playoffs potentially. The Colts beat the Jags, so they won their last 3. And then the Dolphins, interesting one for them in New York as well. Then in the AFC North, as I mentioned, Steelers lose that game against Cincinnati at home, and so the Ravens take the top spot there as they beat the Browns at home. Then I've got the Texans at 11-6. Steelers go down to the 5 at 11-6. And the Chargers win in Las Vegas to get the number 6 spot. And the Denver Broncos, as I mentioned, punch their ticket to the playoffs with a win against Kansas City at home. So I'm really taking a bearish stance on this Kansas City team right now, but it all depends on the injury news to Patrick Mahomes. So I might have to update this video in the coming days reflecting some news there. Then in the NFC, you've got the Lions, who have already clinched the number 1 seed going into this week, as I mentioned, with that Minnesota loss in Week 17. So I think that they would rust their starters in that game there against Minnesota, and even with the loss would get the number 1 spot. Then Eagles, I'd have them beating New York at home, would get the number 2 seed at 14-3. And then the Rams against the Seahawks, I have them winning that one. Just think that the better team at this point get to 11-6 and essentially win out for the rest of the season. Then the Bucs, I have them winning in Week 18 against New Orleans at home, get the number 4 seed at 10-7. And the Falcons, even though they won against Carolina, they need Tampa Bay to lose that game, and it just didn't happen there. Then the Vikings, I have them retaining the number 5 seed with that win. Packers get a win against the Bears, get to the 6, and I have the Commanders winning in Dallas to get the number 7 spot. So those are my updated predictions. Let me know what you guys think of these predictions in the comments down below and some of my other analysis of the playoff picture at this point. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one.